Hello and welcome to episode number 3 of this series. In this episode, I am going to create the first controller called the student controller, and I am going to inject my DB context. Of course, we can also create, a repository and then inject the repository. Maybe that's, a piece of refactoring that I will implement in future episodes, but for now, in this episode, just the student controller injecting the DB context and then implementing the 4 basic operations: CRUD, create, read, update, delete. As you remember, in episode number 1, I said I'm assuming you're already familiar, at least a little bit, with the concepts of developing web APIs using ASP.NET Core. So, in this episode, we're gonna talk about the first controller. I will discuss some of the important things that are going on, but of course, I'm assuming you are already a bit familiar with developing web APIs. And then of course, we're gonna test the different endpoints using Swagger. So this is the student controller that we're gonna create. So as you can see, we have applied the two important attributes: API controller and then route. So the route of this controller is going to be API and then a student. We're inheriting from a student base. We are injecting our app.db context. Then we have our different endpoints. So for example, we have this endpoint that is going to return all of the students using our context. We've got another get endpoint that is going to take an ID as an input, and then it's going to find the student whose ID matches the ID we have received inside of our route, and then we're going to return that student if that student is available. We've got a post request. As you can see here, we're going to receive a student. Of course, we can refactor this to receive a DTO. This is probably something that I'm going to develop in future episodes, but right now I'm receiving the entity class itself. So I am receiving the student, I'm saving this, I'm adding this to the context, and then I am returning created at action using the get endpoint we created above, and then the ID of that student. We've got the put endpoint, as you can see here, for updating, a database. For updating a student, we're getting the ID and the student, the updated, version of that student. First, we try to find that, we're trying to see whether the ID that we have received here and the ID of the student are the same. If they're not, we're going to return back request. Then we're going to find the student to be updated. If the student can't be found, we're going to return not found. Otherwise, we're going to, update the full name, email, date of birth, and phone number. Of course, here, what you can do probably, after you clone the repository, is to go ahead and add some Fluent validation probably, or implement CQRS. If you want to know more about CQRS, I've got a playlist on the channel that you can watch. And then we're going to save the changes and return no content. The last thing is the delete endpoint, which is going to take the ID of the student as input. First, we're going to find the student. If it can't be found, we're going to return not found. Otherwise, let's remove it. Let's save the context, and then let's return no content. So this is the controller that we want to create, a student controller. I have created a new branch, as you can see here. For this episode, I'm going to create my controller. So I'm going to call this student controller, and then I'm going to start developing the student controller. We're going to inject our application DB context, which is registered inside of our DI container, and then let's go ahead and implement our different endpoints. First, we have that get endpoint. The next endpoint is get a student, which is returning a student based on the student ID. The next endpoint is the post endpoint that is going to take a student and apply that student to our context. and return created at action using the endpoint we created above, get a student. The put is going to receive the ID and then the student to be, updated, the updated version of that student. First, let's find the student. If it can't be found, let's return not found. Otherwise, let's go ahead and do the update. And then return no content. The last endpoint would be delete. So we're going to take the ID of the student and then remove that student if it is inside of our context, by the way. Otherwise, we're going to return not found. So this is the basic. I'm going to receive a student here, by the way. This is a basic controller that we have defined here. So these need to be student and also here, and we're fine now. So HTTP post is gonna get a student here. So we're fine now. Let me go ahead and continue with the notes. So we are going to test this using Swagger, and then we are going to see the different endpoints that we have, and of course we're going to be able to, for example, pass this sample data to our database. So let me go ahead and run the API. So this is the API that we have. We've got the different endpoints, getting one single student, posting a student, getting one single student is here. This is getting all of the students, right? And then updating one single student and then removing a student. Let me go ahead and, for example, do a post. So I can go ahead and, for example, do a simple update here. Of course, we do not have any data validation for example, email or for phone number, but we're fine for now. Maybe we will, implement them later. So we've got this 201 code, a status code. If we go to our database now, and if I run this, I can see that the record got created here. So we're fine. Let me go back to the notes. The summary of this episode: we have a full working student controller. We have implemented the CRUD operations. Right now, the controller is integrated with the PostgreSQL database, and we have Swagger for testing as well. And that's a wrap for this episode. If you enjoyed watching it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and also stay tuned for the upcoming videos as well.